me, the most fascinating team this season in the SEC is Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on A&M and where this might be going. They've got their bigger games at home, including the Alabama game. I mean, is Haynes King going to be the quarterback? We don't know. But look, they've got. I mean, as people may not realize this, I think your group does. Isaiah Spiller is one of the better athlete, skill position players in the nation. Anaya Smith is too. Weidmeyer, Lord, that they're always going to have a tight end, aren't they? But see, where they have really improved is Mike Elko, who came over from Notre Dame as a D coordinator. They have got and they couldn't say this years ago, they have got a legitimate SEC defensive line. And I will say, as long as God allows me to be on this earth, that especially this is a line of scrimmage league, and if you've got a legitimate defensive line, you can win games. But I still say what A&M's got to be able to get over in this situation, particularly like against Alabama. Bama knows they can win that game. A&M thinks they can win that game, and that's what Jimbo Fisher's trying to change.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating situation. Again, you talk about defense, and if you go back to the Kevin Sumlin days, of course, he broke through with Johnny Manziel. They had the big year. You thought they were off and running. He was one of the chic coaches in the country, and he was recruiting extremely well. And even on the defensive side, and for year after year after year, I was thinking, when are these defensive recruits going to finally take hold? Right. There would be a star here and a star there, but when you put it all together, they were getting ravaged, and they had to outscore everyone, and they were throwing the ball all over the place with anybody in the league, but just the defenses never hit. They just didn't seem tough enough. They seemed to bring this mindset from the Big 12. You enter Mike Elko, as you mentioned, and they put together one of the best defensive efforts in the country last year and only lose two defensive starters in Bobby Brown and Buddy Johnson. And so they seem to be fortified on that side of the ball. How's the offensive line going to look, and how are they going to protect that inexperienced quarterback?
Well, and I tell you that they've got and people may snicker at this, but they've got an early game with Colorado at Colorado. I'm not saying that Colorado is going to win, but that's one of those road games they need to be careful about, and as far as where that might go. And look, for Colorado, my understanding is, Mark, help me on this, their starter may be the Tennessee transfer, JT Starrett or Stroud. I'm probably butchering his last name. Forgive me, but
yeah, Shroud.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. That would be fascinating to see him play in that game against A&M. But I gave him a lot of credit. And listen, the shame of it is, like Eric Gray going to Oklahoma, the Tennessee is furnishing a lot of teams with a lot of players, Henry To'oTo'o too. But I'll say this, and I agree with that. My vote's most interesting team is LSU. I look, right now, if you ask me, who do I think is going to be next to Alabama in second place, I would vote for LSU. I think they've got two quality quarterbacks in Miles Brennan and Max Johnson, Emory at running back, Butte at wide receiver. But see, what makes them so good is they've got like, what is it, Mark, 18 to 22 coming back starters. They've got the entire defensive line coming back. Now they lose Rosenthal to Kentucky, which will really help Kentucky, but it's not like they can't find an offensive lineman, and they will. So, and I think we mentioned this, pay attention to this, folks, for LSU. In week 0, UCLA plays week 0. And the first week of the season or second week, shall we say, is, or the first official week, however you want to look at that, UCLA hosts LSU. Now, I'm not saying that UCLA is going to beat LSU. They don't have the players LSU has by any stretch of the imagination. But my thing is, if you're LSU, and you'll hear a lot about this, Mark, aren't you a little bit concerned that you have not played a game? You've got a team in UCLA that's already played a game, and the most improvement you have every year between game 1 and game 2?
That's an old adage, and I believe in that adage. And if you're not improving the most between game 1 and game 2, then your coaching staff doesn't know what it's doing, because that is the game in which you can take the most advantage of. Okay, we've now seen live action against an opponent. What can we do with it? And when your opponent in week 2 doesn't have that advantage, it's not the NFL. No preseason games when you don't have that opportunity. And you've got a road game for LSU. It on paper, when I look at that matchup, it intrigues me from a name value standpoint, a name brand. UCLA, LSU, LSU, UCLA. They're going to play at the Rose Bowl. It's going to be something I want to see. But I'm right there with you in regards to man for man for man. If we listed out the 30 best players that are going to participate in that game, LSU's got 22, 23, 24 of those players, something in that range.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing the measure that I always use is who's got the better roster, and that means the top 50 players. And look, there's no way you can measure this, but the reality is LSU has 50 better players. Their 50 is better than UCLA's 50. Frankly. Then I'm not being disparaging against UCLA. That's just the way that it is. And frankly, to Chip Kelly's credit, I thought they came on, Mark, didn't you, at the end of the year last year, in the way that they played, and hopefully he's turning that around. And for our listeners with SEC, people may forget this, but the reality is a while back, Florida fans wanted Chip Kelly before they hired Dan Mullen. I know you remember that. Now, I don't know if that would have been a fit, frankly, but at the same time, I hope that works, because the truth of the matter is, for that league, USC and UCLA need to be good.
UCLA fascinates me, in addition to a few other programs across the country, because I just think that they have the location. California produces. Now, the California high school football talent has fallen off, but it's still extremely strong. But it used to be right there with Texas and Florida, but it's fallen off, probably below Georgia now, but it's still extremely strong, top 4 in the nation. And just with the location, I just have always thought, why doesn't UCLA win more football games? Well,
obviously, people who followed the program, and unfortunately, we lost Terry Donahue a few days ago. But I can tell you, and a lot of people may remember Terry more as an analyst on television who did a really good job. I believe he was with Keith Jackson at one point, Whitney Mark. But he was a very good football coach there, and really made a lot of inroads. Gosh, I remember Gary Beeben out there, for that matter. But I'm, of course, me being much older than you, young man. But the thing about, although our daughters would say that we're, somewhere close to the crypt keeper in age, but I'm with you. I would like to see that.